once you're in that cycle of using or sleeping, twice a week, really in terrible mental, physical, and spiritual shape, self-respect isn't even a thought in your head. It was so degraded, so like living out like in zero gravity, like launched yourself into deep space. Or in my case, with other addicts, and we are like the island of Neverland, island of lost boys, misfit toys, in a community that sort of is drawn together in that dark, self-destructive world. So no, self-respect isn't even on the table at that point. It was a long healing process to get back, and I'm super grateful that I'm still on that positive journey.
Hello, welcome back. This is Andreea Parc.
And Alexa Dumitru.
And this is Alive.Again podcast, a podcast where attorneys and other professionals meet to discuss real life challenges and how our decisions shaped our journeys. Our guest today is Brad Rouse.
Like house.
Rouse.
Rouse like
All right.
house, yes,
Rouse.
yes.
He is a writer, a wise counselor, sober coach, and mitigation specialist to criminal defendants and their families through whitecollaradvice.com. He helps defendants tell their stories at the most important moment of their lives. Thank you, Brad, for being here with us.
Great to be here.
I listened to one of your latest podcasts. I believe it's an hour and 45 minutes, closer to 2 hours. And I normally don't listen to podcasts so long, but yours was so fascinating that I listened to every minute of it. So thank you so much for sending it to me. And it's a pleasure to have you on our podcast. You're doing great work now, but you've been a Broadway director. You graduated Harvard. I mean, you have such an extraordinary background. You have discussed in all the podcasts about prison. But what I want to talk to you about is the personal responsibility of prison in general and the self-respect to ourselves. And also, how do we cope with the guilt and shame and all the negative emotions that come with this experience? And I would like to start by asking you, looking back at your life, was it one moment or was it a period that forced you to confront your personal responsibility and how that looked like?
It's a great subject. It's something I deal with every day when helping defendants. The vast majority of which have, like me, pled guilty. In 2008, I accepted responsibility in court. I pled guilty to my part in an illegal drug conspiracy and had consequences, including a year in the federal detention facility in Brooklyn. I did the formal acceptance of responsibility. I did a lot of apologizing to my family. I accepted the consequences. They were painful, but it really was a very long time until I really was able to reckon with the harm in my story in a way that had a healing process. It was really when I finally achieved meaningful long-term sobriety, when I started to look, because a lot of the harm that I did in my life was perfectly legal. And a lot of the harm that was done to me was perfectly legal. So I think for someone going through the system, there often comes with a lot of other harm in their story. Harm done to them, other kinds of harm they did to themselves or others. So sometimes we can get a little over-focused on the government aspect of that healing process. And I've had a very powerful experience working with almost 400 defendants, talking to a lot of people in early sobriety, and having that healing process, taking a slow, gentle look at our stories, has been very powerful. It's an essential part of human life that we need to pass down to future generations. And so I really love this topic.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's wonderful that you spoke about harm. And a lot of the harm that we're doing is to ourselves. And we continue in that without stopping and actually taking responsibility for our own actions. And that's very hard. And very few people are doing that. Through my work with clients, especially attorneys, and with this podcast and talking to a lot of people, I'm going through my own healing as well.
Reckoning with the harm in our stories can be a very beautiful process if it's guided the right way. It sometimes can be very hard. Sometimes the harm we do to ourselves, we think is nobody's business. If it's drugs, alcohol, gambling, pornography, there's a lot of self-harm out there that's perfectly legal, that we are in denial of the consequences, the harm to our reputations, our bodies, our bank accounts, and we think it's nobody's business. No one's the boss of me. But reality is the boss of us. Sometimes if we end up doing a lot of harm to ourselves, living in a level of denial, level of delusion, we can end up with real consequences if they end up crossing a legal line and the government gets involved. Then it becomes a more complex process.
Yeah. And it's not only self harm, but it's the butterfly effect because it affects the children, the family, the parents, the spouse.
Yeah, I mean, certainly for the things I describe, which are kind of legal kinds of self-harm, of course it affects families. Of course it affects your community. Of course it affects all the people who love you. When I'm working with people who have federal cases, doing the mitigation work, the storytelling work, a lot of times it takes a long time to come around to accepting responsibility that you crossed a legal line. And the pain of the process can be so intense that in rejecting like the government's viewpoint, you can end up, living in denial a little bit about a line that gets crossed. And so sometimes a client or a defendant really accepting responsibility, seeing the line that was there, understanding why the line was drawn, understanding it's someone's job to guard that line. That's sometimes the longer process that can take months.
Yeah.
So in movies and TV shows and whatever, accepting a guilty plea means that they just want to get the easier, lighter sentence. And from your personal experience, what's the percentage of people who genuinely accept responsibility for what they've done versus people who just want a lighter sentence?
Look, movies and television totally distort everything. They're in the business of being captivating and dramatic. So that's not really a great source of information. For what I'm doing, because I'm not a lawyer and I'm not getting anybody legal advice. I'm really like someone who's in their corner. And their case has a judge, and it's not me. My goal is that someone's interaction with me is going to result in a better future for themselves. Many people enter a plea negotiation with the government because they want a lower sentence. They want to go to jail for a shorter amount of time. But, for me, what I hope with everybody is that if they cross the line, the process of like atoning, accepting responsibility, talking about what went wrong is a healthy experience. Because sometimes someone will start and they'll say, yeah, I broke the law, but that was nobody's business, or F the government, or F that person who got me in. And they're so full of that sort of drama of all of it.
Pointing the finger.
Because it's painful. It's very hard to go through the system as a defendant. It's like an earthquake in the middle of your life. It was United States versus me. And it's very stressful and painful. It's hard to know how to move through that process and keep yourself intact. But I would say for the most part, the vast number of people that I work with understand they've crossed a line, understand there needs to be a reckoning with that, and take that opportunity to change direction in their life. Get sober, stop gambling, stop lying, stop keeping secrets, allowing yourself to clear your conscience. I mean, that is a huge part of this process. a huge part, and it's a huge gift to help somebody. I can't tell you how many clients have said, the day the feds knocked on my door, I knew why they were there, and I felt so relieved. That's a big part of it, our conscience and getting free of that. So to answer your question, no matter why they start the process of acceptance of responsibility, my goal, and I'm not a lawyer, I'm just like someone who's in their corner. My goal is to move them through that storytelling process, and by the end, set them in a direction to have a much better life.
Yeah. And now let's go to a more lighter subject, humor,
Oh,
which
yes.
saved us and so many other people. And I've listened to the way you tell your story, and I found it with a lot of humor in it. And I wanted to ask you, that's who you are, or you found humor a way of coping?
Well, I mean, in the podcast that you saw, and I'm so glad you watched it and so glad you enjoyed it. It's on my website, a link to it at bradrause.com. But there's also Rotten Mango, which is a big hit podcast, has 6 million subscribers. Super proud to be part of that. And they really wanted to know about my year at MDC Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And that year, where I was in a single room with, 110, 120 men from all over the world, you put that many people in any room, there are going to be hilarious things that happen. And it's just human life. I mean, life, all that energy and all of those, foolish moments and men with no shame and conflict and difficulty and joy and all kinds of stuff packed into that room. There are a million things that were hilarious that happened. I mean, that's just me observing and reporting the clownishness of just human life on Earth. And you put it all in one space, and it's times 10. So for me, I don't think of it as a coping thing. It's just I observed things that were hilarious to me. And of course, I have a theater background and I directed a lot of comedy. So somebody who knows how to tell a joke or who can get a laugh or do a bit. There was one guy on my unit that was one of the best clowns I'd ever seen. And by clown, I mean like a great mimic. He would walk behind the guards and do this perfect imitation. And he was a fantastic performer, one of the best I'd ever seen. And of course, he was absolutely delightful. And I could appreciate that anywhere. But there, it was like a gold mine to have someone who knew how to tell a joke. I will tell you, I got to my unit in terms of laughter, and I was so miserable and in such a horrible condition. And there was one guy who was laughing so hard. Someone told him a story, and he was laughing. I looked over there, and I thought, what are you, crazy? You're in jail. Why are you laughing? But then over time, I realized he was adapting.
Yeah.
He had this time in the penalty box. He had a life before, he's going to have a life after. And while he's there, he's not going to, he's going to keep living. If something's funny, he's going to laugh. I tell many clients, look, the government is going to punish you. You don't have to help them. And so watching these men adapt and live and keep moving forward with the best possible attitude, if I can pass that adaptation along to someone who's in despair, that is, a great, great feeling for me.
Have you ever thought of writing a play about it?
I think about a lot of things. I want to find a way to share what I've learned, not just on that unit, but the hundreds of people I've worked with at whitecollaradvice.com and the people that I've worked with from all over the country, all over the world. Doing this job has given me an incredible amount of hope because I'm often talking to people on the worst days of their lives.
Yeah.
They want to die. They've lost everything. Their wife is leaving them. Their business is gone. And they're looking at the future and see nothing but death and despair and misery. I hear them and I think, oh, they're going to be great. Because I've seen so many people move through that despair, pivot towards adaptation, start taking steps, start heading towards the light, one day at a time. Once they start heading that direction, often they come through and they're much better. And in fact, The season of their life where they were causing harm, breaking the law, keeping secrets, telling lies, all of that, that's a very dark time in someone's life.
Yeah.
And if you can
And
get
it's
through,
already behind them.
and then it's behind you, so the worst is behind you.
Yeah.
And when people make that change of direction, it fills my heart with such joy. So yes, I'd love to find a way to share what I know. I don't know quite how yet, but it's definitely coming.
We're looking for it on Broadway.
Oh, I don't know about that, but I know so many people who are miserable. And I'm like, what are you, crazy? Head towards the light. Even on my worst days, I can always feel grateful. And of course, getting sober is a huge part of that for me. And my life is a million times better now than it was 30 years ago. And I just keeps getting better.
Yeah. I want to touch upon the subject of forgiveness. What do you think in this period of life, probably the worst in somebody's life, what does forgiveness play into this?
I think of it more, I'm going to just change the word a little bit. I think of it in terms of making amends and letting things go. If I've caused someone harm, if there's something I can do, I can say, look, I caused this harm. What can I do to make things right? And the legal process can really help with that. There is a way in which the legal process can help you make amends for the harm you caused. And eventually, if you move in the right direction, you're able to let things go. So if someone's done harm to me that hasn't made amends from a long time ago, I have now let all that go. I've learned to let it go. So the word forgiveness sometimes, I don't know, the way it hits my ear sometimes means you need some moment where you say, it doesn't matter what they did. For me, the real power in the harm that's been done to me, or the pain I've experienced, or the disappointments, is being able to let it go, because then it just lifts off my heart. Now, that took very long with certain things. Letting go of resentments are very hard, because sometimes holding on to resentments, it's like having a bank of money. Like, I have that resentment. Like, it can feel like, I've got that thing over that person. So when I'm working with clients, or even in my own life, I don't think about forgiving the pretrial services person who did something that was really bad. And that happened. There were things where there were people in the system who abused their power and caused harm. I don't think about forgiving them. I think about letting that go. I wish them well. I pray for them. And that's, for me, what makes my life better, because I want to be free of that. I don't want to carry any of that around.
As a result of my experience, I created a program that now helps people that's called Apple. And the L in Apple is the process of letting go, and it's formed of forgiveness and acceptance. And the very hard to me, and I observed in people that I work with, is forgiveness and acceptance of self more than somebody else.
Look, the facts of our stories don't change, but our relationship to those facts can change over time. So there can be something where I felt great shame about an action I took that hurt someone I loved. And over time, I had changed my relationship to that moment. Have I made amends for that moment? Have I changed my attitudes and behavior so I don't repeat that? And then over time, at some point, I can let that go. I feel it lifting off my heart. I mean, at my worst moments, my heart was like a lead pellet in my belly. Heavy, my eyes went dark, my laughter went away, because I was carrying so much secrets and shame for so long. And I did have to change direction. I had to change my attitude towards my own story and start to heal it. That was a process that took time. But now as I sit here today, the light came back in my eyes, my laughter came back, my heart feels lighter now than maybe since I was a child. And so, if someone's listening to this and is feeling that heaviness of darkness, despair, take it to the grave secrets, all that stuff that can lead us to really to not feeling the love of loved ones, to medicating those feelings with drugs and alcohol, to isolating, to withdrawing from the world, all that is not healthy. If you're in the winter of life, if you're in that kind of winter of your life, springtime's around the corner, but you have to believe it's there and you have to head towards the light.
You mentioned in that podcast, and I found it very interesting because very few people talk about this, that there are angels in prison.
Oh, yeah.
I love that. Talk about that a
got,
little bit.
I got a lot of help. I got a lot of help. I was in terrible shape. I went in, I had a terrible concussion. I was addicted to benzodiazepines and meth. I was full of despair, shame, humiliation. I was in horrible shape, spiritually, intellectually, physically, mentally. And I needed a lot of help. And there were other men on my unit who, if I was struggling, would help. And sometimes it was just a little nudge to make sure I was following the rules. Sometimes it was like just helping me adapt because I'd never been in a place like that. So I needed a lot of help and advice. And it just was there in the men that I lived with, because we all lived in one room. It's not cells. We're all on top of each other. And then there's some people who work there. The psychiatrist, I didn't see her often. She did a phenomenal job with me. The pharmacy tech was a hero. There's one moment, if I ever saw her again, it brings tears in my eyes. She just came through at a moment where I was very desperate with the pharmacy thing. And she was like a hero. There was a pastor who did a great job, a priest who did a great job, corrections officers. If they knew what they were doing, they were like, I just had huge respect for a corrections officer that was good at their job, that when they walked in, brought a sense of peace and respect with them, because that changed everybody's day. So, of course, in that kind of situation, there are people that are full of rage, they cause harm, there's fights. There are people who work at the jail who think they're there to be punishers. There are huge amounts of frustration. But when the angels are there, and they were everywhere, because they're everywhere. They're on the subway, they're at the dentist's office, they're in our buildings, in our communities. There's people that are going to be there. And I don't think I ever knew that. I never trusted that. And I never experienced it, because I'd never been as desperate as I was at that time.
I think that's the thing.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why you saw them.
Yeah.
They are everywhere. If we don't
Yeah.
believe that
Yeah.
they are, we don't see them. But when we let our guard down, that's when, I guess, help and change and people like this are allowed in our lives.
When I was drinking and drugging and keeping secrets, the people that were drawn to me were other people like them, and when I changed direction in my life, the people that were drawn to me were more of that type of person. And my life is full of the most wonderful people now, and I'm super grateful for my sober community, for the community of other people like you who are doing service for people going through the system now, that are trying to help people on that journey. My life's full of angels right now. And it's just great. My life is so good right now.
That is wonderful. And I want to talk about, because we spoke with several guests now about self-respect. And one point in my book that I wrote after I came out is respect. Respect for myself and respect for others. What can you tell us about self-respect during incarceration and then post-release?
Well, I would say I gained self-respect over that year as I adapted to that circumstance. I was really in a puddle of terrible, my really despairing, very negative, really negative rumination, gerbil wheel from hell in my head, cold, hungry, angry, resentful. And slowly over time, as I started to adapt to life in that situation, as I learned how to get fresh vegetables from the vegetarian tray and learned to pray with some of the other men on my unit, I started to write letters, started to think more clearly. And as I adapted, as I got into a routine that was productive and healthy, exercise, eating well, good sleep schedule, reading, bringing myself back to life, I gained self respect because I could see myself getting better, really in all ways. And certainly, one of the things I'm so proud of to work with Michael Santos and Justin Paperny is that they have done a phenomenal job talking to people and getting them in the best possible frame of mind before they even go in. So God, men and women whose lives they have touched can go in ready with their self-respect intact, with an eye on the future, with like not wasting a day while you're there. Keep moving the ball down the field in the right direction. And so it really was, the more I made positive choices, the more I respected myself. And as I changed the direction of my life and my attitudes, I started feeling better. When I got out, again, Michael and Justin have done such a good job. I mean, I wasted a lot of time. I think where I am now is a good example, but if you would have pointed a camera at me when I got out, I would have been a bad example because I sat in despair. I felt humiliated, like life was over. A lot of friends, professional colleagues weren't returning my calls, weren't answering my emails. I had no idea how I was going to support myself. And I really stayed in that dark headspace for a long time, way too long. But again, once I changed direction, once I started doing things, doing service, it really was doing service, eating better, exercising, being better to other people, better to myself. As I reconnected with the world, my self-respect came back naturally.
Do you feel that you lost that when you were in the height of your addiction?
Oh, well, when you're in the height of addiction, my brain and my thinking and my body's so hijacked by those substances. Of course, I had no self-respect. I mean, I cut the wire to my intercom. I changed my phone number. I cut myself off from anybody I knew before because I didn't want them to see me in that condition. Once you're in that cycle of using, or I was sleeping, twice a week, really in terrible mental, physical, and spiritual shape, self-respect isn't even a thought in your head. It was so degraded, so like living out, like in zero gravity, like launched yourself into deep space. Or in my case, with other addicts, and we are like the island of Never Never Land, island of lost boys, misfit toys, in a community that sort of is drawn together in that dark, self-destructive world. So no, self-respect isn't even on the table at that point. It was a long healing process to get back, and I'm super grateful that I'm still on that positive journey.
And with the work that you're doing now with white collar, so you have professionals mostly, right? And we all create an image about ourselves that becomes an identity. And people that come to you, they're terrified that they're going to lose everything, they're going to go to prison, they're going to lose their identity and money and family and profession. How do you help them understand that there is life after prison?
The beginning of a case, especially for somebody who worked with high profile clients, people who've had high positions in their companies, elected office, famous for one reason or another, for someone like that, what going through the system does to their name. I had a very smaller version of that. I mean, I wasn't, well known outside of certain circles, but in certain circles, I had a really good reputation and people looked up to me. And feeling your sort of name taken away or losing your name, result of your own actions, a government press release. Some people, I wasn't, but some people get on the news. All of that's very, very painful. What it does to your name, what it feels like when that's going on. And when I'm talking to people in those sort of situations, it's really a one day at a time thing. When the press release hits, it's just painful. My advice is to turn off the TVs, take it one day at a time, make sure you're eating 3 meals a day, breathing, going to bed, taking a shower, moving your body. With that intense kind of pain, sometimes the best advice is to just do the basics, because sometimes you forget to do the basics when you're under that kind of stress. I encourage everybody with the federal system, because as you know, it can take many years from your target letter or the government press release to a plea hearing to a sentencing hearing, getting out on the other side. That can be a very long, many-year journey. So slowly, gently helping somebody adapt and like pivot to a new reality, start a new season of life where this is just part of their story. I do my best with every person to, get them moving in the healthiest way, moving forward. But that you can't, that doesn't happen in a moment. And you can have 3 hours in the afternoon where you're feeling good and then get one text message and be back in despair for another week. It's a huge emotional journey. And the best I can do with people that I work with or people that I know in the world, a friend whose child dies of a drug overdose, someone who goes through other very serious life traumas. In those early stages, the best anyone can do for a friend is just be there, listen, encourage them to take care of themselves. And when the energy lightens up a little bit, start giving more specific direction so they can start making choices to rebuild for the next season of their life.
It's interesting that I woke up this morning and I realized it's the 22nd of November. And I went in on November 19. So it's been more than 7 years. Up until now, every November 19, I would remember. But this year, I didn't remember. And I woke up and I felt good that heaviness of the date does not mean much to me anymore.
When I'm first talking to someone, I never try to, and I never say like, you're going to feel better. I mean, because when you're in that sort of darkness, you don't want to hear that. You really can't hear it. It's slowly over time, over many hours of listening, a lot of weeks and months, usually I'll talk to have a few conversations over a long period of time. At some point I'll say, the moment's going to come. It's in the cosmic calendar where you're going to be able to let that feeling go and feel good again. The first time I say it to somebody, it almost sounds impossible that they could ever feel good again, that they could ever feel peaceful or healthy or optimistic again. But people do. And people like you and me that have been through that whole journey and are learning to let go and move forward in a positive way, we can be of great help to people in doing that. And I'm going to do that for the rest of my life.
You mentioned about having the name on all over the news. This morning I was working on the podcast SEO. Back when I had the legal troubles, they were 10 pages of Google news with my name.
Mm-hmm.
And now, after so many years, I was looking online to see the ranking, and somehow I was afraid to check. But then, of course, doing the work, I know how to coach myself out of that. But it's still a trauma that a lot of people experienced. And we can let it go and go over it, but it's there and
it's a daily battle.
It's right. It's work with ourselves every single day.
And it takes time.
Yeah.
I mean, it just takes time. And I think the best we can do, the best I try to do is just be an example.
Yeah.
I mean, there's certain feelings that can be lifted from you over time if you're heading in the right direction, but no one, there's no magic wand for those things to just go away.
Yeah.
And there's still moments where, some memory or thought that's dark or discouraging will like pop into my head. And what I've learned is to trust that thought will pass. That if I get bad weather in the brain, if some like darkness comes in, memories or thoughts that are negative, I now have the faith that that weather will pass.
Yeah.
And sometimes that really is all I need to get through a moment where I feel discouraged or resentful or powerless.
Yeah. And it's ultimately a choice if we give attention to that particular thought or not.
Yeah.
We're approaching the end, and there is one question that I ask every guest that
Oh, yeah.
is, what is one activity in your life that makes you feel more alive?
I mean, there's a lot of things. I love going to concerts, early music concerts over at the Voices of Ascension. It's a wonderful musical group at Fifth Avenue and 11th Street in New York. I do a lot of reading, I exercise, going to my 12-step fellowship, really the work I'm doing. I lived in a very dark winter, long winter of unhappiness. And now, most days, I feel quite alive all day long. And it's a huge blessing. I'm super grateful, and I couldn't do it without a lot of support and a lot of help.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Oh, I'm thrilled. I mean, I'm thrilled. I love this podcast. You've talked to a lot of people who I love, and the more people can hear your voice and your message, the better.
Thank you so much. Thank you, our listeners, for listening. For more conversations and more guests, please subscribe and follow us. Thank you, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.